Good day, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Souls and welcome back to Will It 40k. Before we begin, I would like to mention that I will be abroad on business trip next week, so I won't be able to engage on the usual level. There will still be a video next Tuesday though. With that said, let us throw another non-40k thing into our 40k blender to see if Sith and Jedi would work in a 40k universe. In order to have this concept work, I will have to make a few assumptions, and they will go as follows. The galaxy in which 40k takes place is not the same galaxy where Star Wars takes place. It is, however, a neighboring one. This concept will work as both 40k and Star Wars have instances of void travel between galaxies. Second, the Force is a separate power from the warp and does not draw from it. We have no reasons to believe that the Force has anything to do with the warp, as it emanates itself in a different way and doesn't carry the same dangers as using psychic power in 40k. Additionally, I can't believe I'm saying this, but thanks to midichlorians, we have a nice and clear division between the people who can or can't access the Force. Nobody from 40k universe will have midichlorians in their system, therefore they won't be able to use the Force. This works both ways though, as warp has no presence in Star Wars galaxy, nobody from there will have access to warp powers. But also they will have a minimal warp presence as well. The issue with Star Wars is that you can really look at both Jedi and Sith in variety of time periods, where their reach and number greatly differ. Because of this, I decided to divide this concept into two parts. Yes, I know nobody likes to have to wait for part 2, but this is a compromise I have to make in order not to make this video too long and to have content for you next week. In this part we'll focus on the Sith and Jedi, as we know them from the prequels and original trilogy, 6 movies in total. I will avoid referencing The Force Awakens and Last Jedi as much as possible because of the incredibly blurry writing, no lore consistency and general mess that it is. To drive my point home, neither Snoke nor Kylo are actually Siths, nor do they refer to themselves as such, making this concept obsolete. Rey is hardly a Jedi too, even if she thinks that is the case. As the most recent movie conveniently states, Luke Skywalker was the last Jedi. Back on track. As always, we will have to bring up some definitions to help clarify the concepts of Jedi and Sith. I'm fairly confident most people on the planet have at least a basic understanding of both, but I find that most often people are entirely wrong about what makes a Sith. Let's start with the easy one, reading from the Wikipedia. A Jedi was a Force-sensitive individual, most often a member of the Jedi Order, who studied, served and used the mystical energies of the Force, usually the light side of the Force. The weapon of a Jedi was a lightsaber, a blade made from pure energy, which have different colors. The Jedi Knights focus on calmness and peace to channel their powers in the Force, using the light side of the Force to serve in the capacity of guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. Nice and simple. With the Sith, however, the situation is not as simple. The Sith, also referred to as Sith Order, were an ancient order of Force wielders devoted to the dark side of the Force. Emerging as a divergent faction of the Jedi Order, the Sith became mortal enemies of the Jedi and fought against them in numerous wars. Driven by emotions such as hate, anger and greed, the Sith were deceptive and ultimately obsessed with amassing power, no matter the cost. On the surface this seemed rather shallow, and therefore many people, especially in the 40k fandom, assumed Sith would simply fall under the blanket statement of chaos and start working together. This couldn't be further from the truth, however. The Sith are not evil. Seriously, they're not. Sith are driven by power and they will do whatever it's necessary to obtain it, because they ultimately believe they are the rightful rulers of the universe. If a plan requires the Sith to burn down an orphanage in order to further his influence, he will likely not hesitate and do so. But on the other hand, if the same goal is obtainable by giving money to the orphanage, then it is an equally likely option. Unlike a Chaos Worshipper, A Sith wouldn't do anything evil just for the sake of it being evil, like impaling people. Sith morality is self-centric, and as I just stated, it lacks the concept of good and evil as we know it. Additionally, Sith doesn't tolerate authority. Allow me to explain this a bit, as it is not a concept well shown in the movies. Ever since Darth Bane, whom we will talk about next week, the Sith adopted the rule of 2. That means at any given time, there can only be a Sith Master and one Sith Apprentice, also known as an Acolyte. A role of a Master is to teach the apprentice everything they know, and the role of the apprentice is to grow in power until they can kill their Master and take an apprentice of their own. It is an expected and inevitable course of action that ensures every Sith is stronger, more powerful and deadly than the predecessor. This means 2 things. 1. A Sith can work under someone only for a limited period of time, until they can overcome and outgrow them. 2. A Sith would never under no circumstances serve a Chaos God, as it is both a lifelong servitude and a master that can't be overpowered by an apprentice. Siths would seek to destroy the Chaos Gods, as that would mean they could become the most powerful beings in the universe. Had God Emperor of mankind had midichlorians in his body, he would fit the description of a Sith almost perfectly. With all that out of the way, how would the 2 factions fare in 40k? We have already established in the video on lightsabers that their weaponry is more than capable in the setting. So now let us move to the politics, military and strategy. Let's start with the Jedi. The Jedi would most likely stand in opposition to the government created in absence of the Emperor. We know that because of their values, they supported the Federation structure and the Senate they represented. I'm going to be generous and have a full Jedi Council land on a human world in a sector that has not been found during the Great Crusade, and therefore has no or limited knowledge of the Imperium and the Galactic War. Since it is not specified how many Masters are in the Council, we will assume 10 for good measure. They will be leading a colony ship of 1 million people who are going to settle on said planet, introducing midichlorians into the gene pool. Naturally, it will take quite some time to have the whole planet mixed in, however Jedi would still have a decent chunk of population to recruit new adepts from. Continuing with our generosity, with the gentle guidance of the Council, the planet becomes the capital of the sector-wide republic, with each planet and system being represented in a Senate. They also introduced the FTL technology to the local shipyards, which without the influence of Mars, are happy to install this safe and fast system instead of the warp drive on the local fleet. Here is the problem though. Jedi will ultimately lead this newfound republic into a peaceful one, with a military designed for defense and largely insignificant ground forces. We see this on display in the prequel movies, where during the droid invasion of Naboo, and during the later Clone Wars, Republic has almost nothing beyond the army of clones made by a Sith, a small force of conscripts, and the Jedi themselves. When Order 66 was given, the Jedi were taken by surprise, and the entire Republic was conquered in an instant. Not that an advanced warning would change much. When the Imperium of Man inevitably finds this newfound Republic, its resources wouldn't be even close to sufficient to form an opposition. Most planets would likely defect and join the Imperium under threat of its military might, and those that remained would be pounded into submission by Imperial Guard and Adeptus Astartes. The only exception would probably be if Lord Gilman himself found this republic and offered it a similar status as the 500 worlds of Ultramar. Still, the Jedi would be unlikely to approve of the Imperium of Man. They would either die or become exile to form a small and ultimately insignificant militia to undermine the Imperial influence locally. How would the Sith fare then? The scenario is exactly the same as last time. A colony ship of 1 million colonists, including some Force-sensitive civilians, but no Jedi, lands in the same sector. Immediately, the behavior changes, however. Instead of integration, the human colony, led by a charismatic, strong leader, constructs an independent enclave that establishes friendly yet distant relations with neighboring planets. Under strong iron fist of the disguised Sith leader, the colony grows in strength, quickly expanding its military capabilities. The Sith Lord, however, isn't stupid, and knows he can't possibly outgrow the other colonies in a reasonable amount of time. Instead, he makes sure the technological superiority of the newfound colony is very visible. Every effort is made to make sure it appears that the colonists live in prosperity. Seemingly out of nowhere, discontent starts to form on other planets, as small teams of insurgents begin to demand better living conditions and tightening the relationship with the colony in order to access their technology. Sith happily obliges and adopts a similar tactic we know from Tau Empire. Hostile assimilation begins. Before long, a friendly pact is made and the neighboring planets begin to work as one, with each being represented in the Senate. The whole thing is naturally a charade, while with bribery, flattery and carefully chosen words, the Sith wins the sympathy and loyalty of other senators, while his acolyte makes sure to place himself as a natural successor, undermining the opponents of a forming federation. Political opponents die in mysterious accidents, until a point where everyone starts suspecting the mighty Chancellor of rigging the Senate. Right at that point, the mighty Sith Chancellor is assassinated. His acolyte wastes not a second to point to Sacrificial Goat, his most outspoken opponent. Sympathetic senators form a strong alliance under the leadership of the new Sith Lord. With their combined might, all opposition is crushed. The Chancellor is dead. Long live the Emperor. At this point, the new Sith Empire begins a quick expansion. With its new military facilities and shipyards, they begin production of a military force, unlike anything seen in this region before. All resources that previously were wasted on infighting now fueled a great industrial machine, boosted even more by mass production of battle droids, clones, and safe FTL, allowing quick and affordable communication within the Imperium. Upon finally meeting the Imperium of Man, the new Sith Empire isn't powerful enough to take it on though. It isn't, however, defenseless either. The Imperial Crusade is greeted with a significant armada of high-tech navy that could certainly eventually be destroyed, but would probably deal enough damage to end the Crusade there and then. Instead of throwing lives away, the Sith Emperor swear fealty to the Imperium on conditions that are similar to the ones offered to Mechanicum. From this point on, one Sith after another emerges from the sector, amassing more and more influence, with the ultimate goal of making the Imperium dependent on their help. Thanks to the Imperial technology, Siths are able to extend their lives greatly, far beyond what was previously possible. One day, they will overthrow the Corpse Emperor, and the true master of mankind will sit on the Golden Throne, the supreme Sith leader. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of part 1 of this video. Next week we shall go back in time to the era of Darth Bane, the Sith Brotherhood of Darkness and their arch-nemesis, the Jedi Order of Light, to see how the situation changes if we put them in place of colony ships. Make sure to watch the video from last week where I discussed the validity of Time Lords in 40k, and I'm 100% correct about everything. Till next time.